It's Mom here. As you may or may not know, I took over Porter Square Books Twitter today, and now I'm going to read you all a bedtime story, and it's one of many, many red wall books that I read to my wee one when she was just a babe. And so tonight we're reading Brian Jacques' MOSSFLOWER. And we actually had a dog named Tessa of MOSSFLOWER. Here we go. Late autumn winds sighed fitfully around the open gatehouse door, rustling brown gold leaves in the fading afternoon. Bella of Brockhall snuggled deeper into her old armchair by the fire, much like me. Through half-closed eyes, she watched the small mouse peering around the doorway at her. "Come in, little one, and close the door." The small mouse did as he was bidden. Encouraged by the badger's friendly smile, he clambered up onto the arm of the chair and settled himself in against a cushion. "You said that you would tell me a story, Miss Bella." The badger nodded slowly. "Everything you see about you, the harvest that has been gathered from the russet apples to the golden honey, is yours to enjoy in freedom. Now, granted, my accents aren't quite spot on as Kate's, but they're creative. Listen now as the breeze sweeps the last autumn leaves off into the world of winter. I will tell you of the long ago time before Redwall Abbey was built in MOSSFLOWER. In those days there was no freedom for woodlanders. We were oppressed cruelly under the harsh rule of Erdalga Green Eyes and his daughter Zarnina. It was a mouse like yourself who saved MOSSFLOWER. His name was known to all, Martin the Warrior. Oh, my little friend, I'm grown old. So are my comrades. Their sons and daughters are fathers and mothers now, but that is life. The seasons still look new to young eyes. The food tastes fresher in the mouths of the young ones than it does in my own. As I sit here in the warmth and peace, it all lives again in my memory, a strange tale of love and war, friend and foe, great happenings and mighty deeds. Gaze into the fire, young one. Listen to me, and I will tell you the story. Book 1, Cotier. Or Coter, I don't know. MOSSFLOWER lay deep in the grip of midwinter beneath a sky of leaden grey that showed tinges of scarlet and orange on the horizon. A cold mantle of snow draped the landscape, covering the flatlands to the west. Snow was everywhere, filling ditches, drifting high against the hedgerows, making paths invisible, smoothing the contours of the earth in its white embrace. The gaunt, leafless ceiling of MOSSFLOWER wood was penetrated by a constant snowfall which carpeted the sprawling woodland floor, building canopies on evergreen shrubs and bushes. Winter had muted the earth. The muffled stillness was broken only by a traveler's pause. I've only got one paw now, you see. A sturdily built young mouse, with quick dark eyes, was moving confidently across the snowbound country. Looking back, he could see his tracks disappearing northward into the distance. Farther south, the flatlands rolled off endlessly, flanked to the west by the faint shape of distant hills, while to the east stood the long, ragged fringe marking the marches of MOSSFLOWER. His nose twitched at the elusive smell of burning wood, and turf from some hearth fire. Cold wind, soft from the treetops, not knowing what soft means, but there we have it. Causing whirls of snow to dance in icy spirals, the traveler gathered his ragged coat tighter, adjusted an old rusting sword that was slung across his back, and trudged steadily forward away from the wilderness to where other creatures lived. It was a forbidding place, made mean by poverty. Here and there he saw signs of habitation. The dwellings, ravaged and demolished, made pitiful shapes under snowdrifts. Rearing high against the forest, a curious building dominated the ruined settlement. Fortress crumbling, Dark and brooding, it was a symbol of fear to the woodland creatures of MOSSFLOWER. This was how Martin the warrior first came to Cotier, place of the wildcats. In a mean hovel on the south side of Cotier, the Stickle family crouched in a low turf fire. It gusted fitfully as the night winds pierced the slatted timbers where mud chinking, had not been replaced. A timid scratch at the door caused them to jump nervously. Ben Stickle picked up a billet of firewood, motioning to his wife Goody to keep their 4 little ones back in the shadows. As the good wife Stickle covered her brood with coarse burlap blankets, Ben took a firmer grip on the wood and called out harshly in his gruffest voice, "Be off with you and leave us alone! There's not enough food in here to go round a decent hedgehog family. You've already taken half of all we have to swell the larders and Cotier." Ben, 'tis I, Earthclaw, open up, 'tis freezing out here." As Ben Stickle opened the door, a homely-faced mole trundled by him and hurried across the fire where he stood rubbing his digging claws together in front of the flames. The little ones peeped out from the blankets. Ben and Goody turned their anxious faces towards their visitor. Earthclaw rubbed warmth into his coat and nose as he talked in the curious rustic mole speech. "Vermin patrols be out by, weasels and stoats and the like. They'm looking for more victuals." Goody shook her head as she wiped a little one's snout on her apron. "I knew it. We should have run off and left this place like the others. Where in the name of spots we find food to pay their tolls?" Ben Sticky threw down the piece of firewood despairingly. "Where can we run in midwinter with 4 little ones? They perish long before the spring." Earthclaw produced a long, narrow strip of silver birch bark and held a paw to his mouth, indicating silence. Scratched on the bark in charcoal was a single word, Coram. Beneath it was a simple picture map showing a route into MOSSFLOWER woods, far from Cotier. Ben studied the map, torn between the chance of escape and his family's predicament. The frustration was clear on his face. "Bang, bang! Open up in there! Come on, get this door open. This is an official Cotier patrol." Soldiers. Ben took one last hasty glance at the strip of bark and threw it on the fire. As Goody lifted the latch, the door was thrust forcefully inward. She was swept to one side as the soldiers packed into the room out of the winter chill. They pushed and shoved each other roughly. A ferret named Blacktooth and a stoat called Splitnose seemed to be in charge of the patrol. Ben Stickle sighed with relief as they turned away from the burning strip of bark and stood with their backs to the fire. "Well now, Dozy Spikes, where are you hiding all the bread and cheese and October ale?" Ben could scarce keep the hatred from his voice as he answered in the sneering Blacktooth. "It's many a long season since I tasted cheese or October ale. There's bread on the ship and only enough for my family." Splitnose spat into the fire and reached for the bread. Ben Stickle was blocked from stopping the stoat by a barrier of spear hafts as he tried to push forward. Goody placed a restraining paw on her husband's Spikes. "Please, Ben, don't fight him. The Creek bullies." Earthclaw chimed in. "Yeah, bain't much he can do against bears, Ben." Blacktooth turned to the mole as if seeing him for the first time. "Oh, what are you doing here, Blink-Eye?" One of the little hedgehogs threw the sacking aside and faced the stoat boldly. "He came for a warm by our fire. You leave him alone." Splitnose burst out laughing, spraying crumbs from the bread he was eating. "Look there, Blackie. There's more of 'em under that blanket. I'd watch 'em if I were you." A nearby weasel threw back the covering, exposing the other 3 little ones. Blacktooth sized them up. "They look big enough to do a day's work." Goodwife's Tickle sprang fiercely in front of him. You let my little ones alone. They ain't harm nobody. Blacktooth seemed to ignore her. He knocked the loaves from Splitnose's paws, then, turning to a weasel, he issued orders. Pick up that bread, no sly munching. Deliver it to the stores when we get back to the garrison. Waving his spear, he signaled the patrol out of the hut. As Blacktooth left, he called out to Ben and Goody. I want to see those 4 hogs out in the fields tomorrow. Either that or you can spend all the rest of the winter safe and warm in coated dungeons. Earthclaw kept an eye to the cracked door, watching the patrol make his way toward Cotir. Ben wasted no time. He began wrapping the young ones in all the blankets they possessed. Right, that's it. Enough is enough. We go tonight. You're right, old girl. We should have left to live in the woods with the rest long ago. What do you say, Earthclaw? The mole stood up with his eye pressed against the crack in the door. Yeah, come here, look at this. While Ben shared the crack with his friend, Goody continued, swathing her young ones with blankets. What is it, Ben? They're not coming back, are they? No, wife. Ho, 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 look at them, my hokey. See the punch he landed on that weasel's nose. Go on, give it to him, laddo. Ferdy, the little one who had spoken up, scuttled over and tugged at Ben's paw. Punch! Who punched the weasel? What's happening? Ben described the scene as he watched it. It's a mouse! Big, strong fella, too, he is. They're trying to capture him. That's it. Now kick him again, mouse. Go on. You'd think a full patrol of soldiers could handle a mouse, but not this one. He must be a real trained warrior. Phew! Look at this. It's knocked Blacktooth flat on his back. Pity they're hanging onto his sword like that by the spikes. He'd cause some damage if he had that blade between his paws, rusty as it is. Bertie jumped up and down. Let me see, I want to look. Earthclaw turned slowly away from the door. They ain't much use, little heads big. They am going down now. I ain't rubbed up too. Ah, were a pity. There'd be too many for him to fight. See him a get brave warrior, though. Ben was momentarily crestfallen. Then he clapped his paws together. Now is the time. While the patrol's busy with the fighter, they've got a job on their paws, dragging him back to the cat's castle. Come on, let's get going, while the going's good. A short while later, the fire was burning to embers in an empty hut as the little band trudged into the vast woodland sprawl of MOSSFLOWER, blinking water from their eyes as they kept their heads down against the keen wind. Earthclaw followed up the rear, obliterating the paw tracks from the snowy ground. Night-night.